Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
You are listening to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, episode 124. Welcome back. Great to have you here this week. Today, I am diving into a topic that's crucial for anyone experiencing burnout, even on the edges or deep into burnout. We are talking about understanding your coping styles. The way that we respond to stress and burnout can either accelerate our recovery or deepen our exhaustion. So today I'm going to explore both unhelpful and helpful coping mechanisms and how you can build your self-efficacy to better manage burnout. I hope you guys have had a great week. I know last week's episode on psychosocial risk factors in the health workplace was really well received, and I can see that the listens have been going up steadily. So thank you so much for your support there. If there's a topic you'd love me to talk about around burnout, send me a DM via Instagram, LinkedIn, or you can send me an email. Details are in the show notes. So I can tell you this really relates talking about coping styles. I've been driving up and down to Bathurst every day, and I've had evening commitments 4 out of 5 nights this week as well. So definitely maxing it out a bit there. Fortunately, got a really quiet weekend, which is wonderful. But, I think how we cope with, increased stress in our lives is really useful to sort of uncover and work out what will lead you in the right direction and what may increase your risk of spiraling down into burnout. So when we're in the midst of burnout, it's really natural to seek relief. Our body doesn't like feeling this constant cortisol and bursts of adrenaline as well, and it wants to get some relief from this sense of danger really that is going on in the body. Unfortunately, some of the most common coping mechanisms can actually worsen our condition. Denial is perhaps the most insidious of these patterns. And as healthcare professionals, we're trained to push through discomfort, to keep going despite challenges. And this can lead us to deny the reality of our burnout, thinking thoughts that might sound familiar to you. Everyone feels this way. I just need to be tougher. This is just part of the job. I know I've talked about the hidden curriculum before, that sort of unsaid curriculum that we learn from other clinicians who are generally ahead of us in their careers. And it's never really written down, but some of that inference is there relating to those thoughts I've just shared with you then. And I can certainly relate to many of these thoughts when I was an intern, a junior doctor in England, working 100-hour weeks, not every week, but quite a few weeks. And then secondly, when I was running my own private clinic here in Orange and, just denying myself that exhaustion was anything abnormal and it was just part of what happens. And that is where the burnout can really go deep, and it can take quite a while for the fully blown burnout to happen if denial is one of the coping mechanisms you're using. Secondly, avoidance is denial's close companion. And when we avoid addressing the source of our stress, we might temporarily feel better, but we're not solving the underlying problem. And this avoidance often manifests in unhealthy, soothing behaviors. So here are some of those that you might relate to. Firstly, withdrawal from relationships, pulling away from your colleagues, your friends, your family when you need support the most. Secondly, increased alcohol consumption, using alcohol to numb your feelings or to help with sleep. Thirdly, excessive screen time and doom scrolling, distracting yourself with endless social media or news consumption. Fourth, there might be substance use, turning to medications or drugs to manage your symptoms. And fifth, overworking. Paradoxically, some people cope with burnout by working even more. We know that productivity level can go down with burnout. So if I work harder and throw more at it, that might be a coping mechanism that will get me out of this. Rarely is it that simple. Research consistently shows that these coping styles are associated with higher levels of burnout and slower recovery. So they might provide you with momentary relief, but they're actually keeping you stuck in the burnout cycle. So let's go and find some problem-focused approaches, finding real solutions. In contrast to avoidance and denial, problem-focused coping strategies directly address the sources of burnout and are protective against its progression. The first step in problem-focused coping is awareness. This means honestly assessing both internal and external stressors contributing to your burnout. So here's a short list of external stressors. These could be excessive workload, toxic workplace culture, a lack of resources, and poor work-life boundaries. Your internal stressors might be perfectionism, people-pleasing tendencies, that real difficulty saying no, and the often present imposter syndrome. So, over the past few years, I was working with a clinician who really was in deep burnout. She was actually off work at this stage, and through our coaching, she identified an external stressor was an individual in her toxic workplace, and her internal stressor was her inability to set boundaries due to fear of letting others down. And really, by addressing both the external and internal stresses, this client was able to negotiate a much more reasonable schedule and develop the confidence to maintain her boundaries. So here are 5 ways that you can develop effective problem-focused strategies. Firstly, seek support. I love this one. It is often the absolute 180 to what people do when they are in burnout, when they withdraw and try and work harder as very high-achieving type A individuals. But I encourage you, if you're looking for an effective problem-focused strategy, to reach out to mentors, colleagues, friends, or professional coaches. Secondly, setting boundaries, learning to say no and protecting your time and energy. Third, prioritizing self-care, really making that rest and sleep and movement non-negotiable. You might also tie in your nutrition to this. I don't particularly coach around nutrition, but that might be something that you know when you're eating better, you feel better. Fourthly, simplifying your life. As I discussed in a recent episode towards the start of this year, simplicity can be a powerful antidote to burnout. And then fifth, addressing the workplace issues directly. And that might mean having some difficult conversations about workload or about culture in the workplace. So as I round out this episode today, I want to talk about building self-efficacy as a real burnout recovery superpower. At the heart of effective coping is self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to perform tasks and achieve goals. When it comes to burnout recovery, self-efficacy is your belief that you can take actions that will improve your situation. So here's how low self-efficacy could sound. Nothing I do will make a difference. This is just how things are. I don't have the power to change this. High self-efficacy, on the other hand, recognizes that you certainly don't control all of the circumstances around you, but there are certain areas you do have control over, and you can take meaningful steps towards improvement. So really getting clear on what is in my control and what is outside of my control can be a great approach to grow your self-efficacy. Here's a few more tips to build your self-efficacy. Firstly, start with small wins. So beginning with manageable changes that you can successfully implement, and each small success you have from these manageable changes, that can really build your confidence for bigger challenges. Maybe it's leaving work on time 1 day a week. And I talked about that with the trainee I'm working with in Bathurst at the moment. And I can see she always turns up to work on time. And the finish time sometimes stretches out a little bit. And I said, how about you look at your work day that you've got and the tasks you have to do, and think about working towards walking out the door at your recommended or scheduled or paid for finish time. And just, it's a bit like that idea of a sleep alarm, but also looking forward to walking out of work at 4:30 in the afternoon. Another small win for you, depending on what's important for you, might be taking a lunch break, your full lunch break, without checking emails simultaneously. Secondly, learn from role models. Identify colleagues who seem to manage their stress effectively. And we're all different in how we manage our stress, but you might be able to learn something from them. For example, what boundaries do they set? How do they communicate their needs? You don't need to copy them exactly, but their example can show what's possible. Thirdly, reframe your setbacks as learning opportunities. When you encounter an obstacle, avoid seeing them as personal failures. Instead, find out, what can I learn from this, and how might I approach this differently next time? Fourth, so important, practice self-compassion. I've discussed this in many previous podcast episodes, but really how you speak to yourself matters. And that's part of addressing coping styles in burnout recovery as well. If your inner critic is super strong, it's not going to be a coping style that will help you recover. But if you have that beautiful inner coach that is encouraging you, you can build that resilience and grow your self-efficacy as well. And finally, track your progress, however you want to do that, whether that's on the Notes app, whether that's in your calendar, whether that's some voice memos, maybe it's a handwritten journal. By journaling your small improvements and the changes you've made, this record provides evidence of your capacity for positive change. So here are my key takeaways from today's episode. Firstly, recognize your current coping patterns, grow that awareness, and take an honest inventory of how you are responding to burnout. Are you using avoidance strategies that provide temporary relief but deepen the problem? Secondly, identify one external and one internal stressor. What workplace factor is contributing most to your burnout, and what internal belief or habit is making it worse? Third, choose one problem-focused action. Select a single, specific step you can take this week to address a source of your burnout. Fourth, build a support network. So identify at least one person you can speak honestly with about your experience. And remember that seeking support is a sign of strength, not weakness. And fifth, practice daily self-efficacy affirmations. Create a simple statement that reminds you of your agency, such as, I have the power to make choices that support my well-being, or each small step I take matters. So this is quite a detailed process that I've shared with you today, and it is for somebody that's sort of got more awareness around where they are in their current burnout situation. And if this all sounds like too much to approach at the moment for you, if you're new to my podcast, absolutely welcome. I would suggest you start off with thinking about what is in your control and what is outside of your control. There's some great graphics that you'll be able to find just by searching that online, and that might be a place to start with. And then when you feel readier, work through your key takeaways from today's episode. Remember, shifting from unhelpful to helpful coping styles isn't about perfection. It's about progress. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast is already evidence of your commitment to problem-focused coping. Until next time, this is me, Dr. Jo Braid, reminding you that you're not alone on this journey. Take care of yourself, and remember that how you cope matters. Thanks so much for listening. Check out my show notes for all the resources that are available for you, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this episode. Schedule a 60-minute power hour with me and leave with relief, decisions made, and clear next steps. Or send me an email for a speaking inquiry. All information is available at drjobraid.com with links in the show notes.